Live streaming. This is the unofficial but only live stream, which is it's very similar to being official. And Academy Health has obviously been helping me out, but it is not endorsed, but I do endorse them. So that's the direction in which the endorsements flow. So when we were talking with the Health Datapalooza team at Academy Health, 6 months ago, 8 months ago, when we first started trying to help plan Datapalooza and asking what we can contribute, what I personally could contribute, but also CareSet, my company, could contribute. What we realized was, and what we wanted to do was ensure that patients continued to have a central role at Datapalooza. And we felt like it was really important. And that we knew even then that the problem would be twofold. One, even then it was clear that there was going to be a recession, right? So we're in the middle of a recession. Everything's more expensive. Gasoline is very expensive. Groceries are very expensive. And there would be a lot of patients that were priced out, not even considering the cost of the conference itself, but just the travel would be too expensive.
Yeah.
And then, of course, obviously, I continue to not know whether to say we are in the middle of a pandemic, we're at the end of a pandemic, we're at the start of an endemic, but COVID is still a thing, however you want to slice that. And so we thought about, well, why don't we just stream everything? But that turned out to be prohibitively expensive, and like nearly six figures prohibitively expensive. And it was just not going to be a realistic part of the budget. But we really wanted to have something that was free for patients to watch who are at home, that was something that people could engage with. And I have to say, I have not properly engaged on social media, mostly because this broadcasts out to 3 different ones at the same time: YouTube, LinkedIn, and Twitter.
Cool.
And I love your dog. She's
been quiet all day. And then, as soon as I start talking or doing something that she doesn't need to be in the background on, she makes herself known.
Well, there you go. Mom's paying attention to something other than me. So the point of this is we rented a suite, which was low enough cost. We get into the part of the hotel Wi-Fi that's reliable. We can stream from here, right? And so this was the solution to this. And we've been, I hope you've seen on my Twitter and LinkedIn all day, we've been having people come in and come out. And you are an ambassador for Datapalooza, isn't that right?
I was. I say past tense only because I had all the intentions to do it. I just wasn't able to actually show up due to caregiving and patient responsibilities, unfortunately.
Yeah, well, right. And you're actually exactly the kind of person that we're kind of doing this for. And it's amazing that as an opportunity that we could do it with you. And I wanted at least once during the live stream, have a live stream that was both here and with a patient at the same time. And you had someone who you work with who was going to be at the conference. And so I thought it would be someone like right here who would be like,
yes, I know. And I always love building, making connections and getting folks together.
Tell me more about what you're working on now. What is that person working on? Like, what's going on with you? Who are you? Please introduce yourself.
Well, I've got lots of hats, not just the one I'm wearing. I've been in the healthcare world. I mean, obviously my whole life, like all of us, but in a professional capacity for about 15 years, have had lots of different roles in that space. I've worked clinically in radiology. I have worked in the healthcare integration world in the weeds with the standards folks. I've worked on the digital marketing and communication side of the shop. I've worked in the IoT, emerging tech, and AI space as well. Most recently, I'm actually working with Fin Partners, which is a global PR agency. We've got a really awesome and dynamic healthcare vertical within that group. Really awesome team of folks. And I've actually more formally joined them as of January. So that's my day job, if you will, which is very exciting too, because it's allowing me at least the chance to combine a lot of the personal side of things, which I'll get into in a minute, of my personal experiences and make them extra impactful alongside some of the client stories that I'm working with. So one of the folks that I was hoping that I was going to introduce you to is with Get Real Health, which is kind of part of the larger CPSI group these days. And he's in charge of patient experience in particular and kind of some of the strategy around that. So unfortunately, that was not an intro we got to make happen today, but that's all right. That'll happen another time.
Sounds good. So, Erica, obviously we've known each other for
A long time.
a long time. You are the Great Chalupa still on
I
Twitter.
am.
That
Yep.
is the kind of early decision that really echoes and is a great decision that you're just going to have to live with for a long time.
I've tried divorcing the name and it doesn't work. It just keeps haunting me, so I just have to embrace it.
So I think it's a great name. It's genius marketing, and I do think it is difficult because people will be like, "Oh, you're talking about Erica? I mean, you mean the Great Chalupa?" And then so yes, I do think that I made a conservative decision with my Twitter handle being Fred Trotter, but I do recognize when someone's personal brand has expanded. But I knew you as the Great Chalupa on Twitter for years. I think we interacted on Twitter before meeting in person. And did we meet at South by Southwest? I know we've seen.
Yeah, that was the first time we got actually to meet in real life. Was at South by Southwest.
Relatively recently, right? It wasn't. Maybe it was last year, the one before that.
Yeah, last year. So, but fast friends, old friends.
Of course, that's what I'm saying. I mean, it's very weird to have a situation where you meet someone for the first time, but you are also old friends.
Yeah.
And that's something that is a new phenomenon that the internet has made, which is great. I think that's one of the better things that the internet has done for us.
I think it's especially profound in this like healthcare tech community in particular, compared to a lot of other ones that I've even come across. I see echoes of it as well in the caregiver space too, and some of the emerging voices in the caregiver and patient engagement world. But health IT, I mean, alone, I know it seemed like every year I'd meet people at HIMSS or, another industry conference. And it was like, oh my gosh, hey, how's it going? And it's like talking to an old friend, which I think speaks to the power of social media too, in terms of connecting people. Because what I always like to describe it as, you go to these conferences and instead of having to spend time, which is precious at these conferences with formalities of who are you, what are you working on? What do you do? What's your background? You get to jump all of that. It's like a reunion. And now you're getting into the meat of a conversation. You're actually building connections with people and innovating around ideas and concepts. And you don't have to spend that time focused on who are you and what are you doing.
Which makes the in-person time far more dynamic.
100%. I mean, no question. Absolutely. So digital alongside in person is like an invaluable combination, I think, for the future of innovation in any industry, but health IT has especially benefited from it.
I'm fairly certain we had tacos or something like tacos.
We did.
First meal there. And the conversation, I don't remember specifically what we talked about, but I do remember it was like serious, it was engaging. It was like we were having conversations about some of the most difficult parts of health IT, the kind of stuff we talk about here at Datapalooza. South by Southwest is a conference for that too. And so it's just a strange thing because we're just having these, well, I would say in working in healthcare, there are so many kind of ethically gray areas and conundrums and, business is a business model. Okay. That you can really quickly get into, I don't think it's like a personal conversation necessarily, but a kind of evocative professional conversation. And then for people who are in the industry, because either they or a loved one had a patient experience, then there's also that, which is very frequently very intimate. And, I don't very often tell my patient story because I want people to hear, I want people to hear my ideas and evaluate them purely on my ideas. And my ideas are usually so geeky and detailed that I'm looking for that feedback, and I don't want to interfere with someone on an emotional level. And then there are other times when I'm not giving that kind of information, then I do talk about my patient story. Would you talk a little bit about yours to the degree you're comfortable now, and then maybe comment on that experience of like meeting someone for the first time when I know all of these details from your Twitter stream about your life and your experiences, what you've been through.
Yeah, absolutely. I think SparkNote's version of, I think the takeaway of the value of the patient voice and patient experience and the stories that exist there really come down to the fact that healthcare is our most vulnerable human experience that we have. And so it's interesting to work as a professional in this space because we oftentimes in a lot of industries and a lot of careers will compartmentalize who we are and our experiences as patients, experience as parents, or caregivers to some extent, but even just family members with who we are professionally. But what I think is more and more becoming the norm is for folks that have professional careers in healthcare. We're learning that, we all are patients at the end of the day. We all have a patient story, and our experience as a patient, even if it's just asking for a medical record from our primary care physician, or having to navigate some really complex and devastating diagnosis, they're both relevant stories, but they're integral and really closely tied to what we're doing professionally, and really bring that purpose to the work that we do. And I just love that about healthcare and working in this space in particular, because we all have those stories and we all have those experiences that color how we make decisions as professionals. For me, SparkNote's version of my patient story is kind of a little bit twofold. So I do not have hair. I usually wear hats only because it's cold in the winter and all your heat goes out your head.
Right? Is that right?
What was that?
You're in Dallas?
I'm in Dallas.
Okay.
It's just winter in Dallas, and so I like the hat vibe.
I want to warn you, there's a bunch of other patients coming, so we will be joined. Carry on.
All right. Awesome. I love it. So Spark Notes on me is I don't have hair. That's a result of an autoimmune condition called alopecia. It actually got a ton of public visibility last spring. If you guys remember the whole Chris Rock, Will Ferrell conundrum that happened in the famous slap.
I do.
Alopecia had a moment.
It's all gonna be one thing. So come on camera and join us.
Guys, come on in.
He's here.
This is the great Chalupa, Erica Olinsky. She is a patient.
Hi.
And she's telling her patient story. She is just letting us know. And I just want to make sure. Would you sit there and just see if you're on camera? Do you want to be on camera?
Mike doesn't want to be on camera.
You don't want to be on
Mike
camera?
doesn't.
What are you guys doing?
We're just going to talk about patient stuff.
Is this
Privacy.
live on LinkedIn?
It is live on LinkedIn and Twitter and YouTube, and we'll be there permanently.
I don't necessarily want my bosses on
It's
LinkedIn
totally
to
okay
see.
if you just go
You gotta
sit there.
go somewhere else because you're on the
Then
camera
you're good,
now.
and you
Okay.
can keep your pink socks and your banana.
Okay.
Those are gifts no matter what.
Oh.
I didn't get a
I
banana.
want to
Oh,
very much.
no
but
problem.
I think my
Totally
bosses,
understand.
like I'm off of work, and and my bosses might be like, "What is my?" Oh.
Everyone's listening
No,
to you
I
right
totally
now.
understand. Yeah, we're all live.
We're live.
Yes. No, and by the way, just to be clear, lots of people feel that way, like bosses, anyways. And so the other thing we can do, dear bosses,
I'm
dear
gonna move over
bosses.
next to Fred.
Yes. Just so you know, this is everybody speaking for themselves, not representing your organization. Blah, 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 the thing, right? So that's what you have to say. So if you want to be on camera, you're welcome. But you I think all the way to
Where's
that
your-
chair is on camera.
Where is your camera? Because I'm at a weird.
It's literally right
angle.
there. See that thing to the right of the thing?
Why do I look like I'm on the side of myself?
Oh, I think it's flipping it, like a mirror. Yeah, it is.
Okay. Anyways.
Is that all right?
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay, we can like change that decision.
No, I'm okay. Let me take off my name tag.
Yes. Oh, y'all are good. Well, there you go.
So Erica was giving she was saying a Spark Notes version of her patient story.
And it's going to be very brief because I do have a hard stop. I have to go run an errand this afternoon.
Oh, and now we've just taken up your entire time with us,
Not
like
the
sitting
entire
reading
time.
in a room.
But a little
the
bit.
first of many Fred and I will do on these live streams, so it's all good.
Yeah.
It'll just be a teaser.
So would you mind taking off your hat just so everybody can see?
Oh.
Erica does not have hair, and that is because of alopecia,
Yep.
autoimmune disease. Go ahead.
It is autoimmune condition. My body, for lots of different theoretical reasons, just can't grow hair. Likely from some stress, which I'll get into in just a second too. In terms of, hey girl, I see you.
Understand.
Yeah.
I understand.
Perfect.
Good here.
It's a thing. It's a thing. It's way more common than people realize, too. So many. Oh my gosh, I saw a woman yesterday that was out and about. And she didn't have hair, and was like, it's funny. On the patient side of things, at least the camaraderie that comes with a very visible diagnosis like that, it's very interesting to see the community start to rally around it and people become more brave. I usually get excited in a very bizarre way when I see someone that doesn't have eyebrows, because usually that's like my indicator. I'm like, oh, they probably have alopecia, maybe more so than something else. So that's a fun little kind of side story. But I was saying, so, like most autoimmune conditions, they usually result from, stress or other environmental triggers or things like that. And your body gets confused and it kind of hyper responds to certain things, and kind of it can be really challenging. And that's part of the complexity behind autoimmune conditions in general, is that there's not a traditional trigger that says, oh, this happened, then this is the result, and this is how we fix it or course correct back to where you were. It kind of forever changes you and how your body works. So I'm not an autoimmune specialist by any means. I'm just the patient side. So I'm definitely not, professing any kind of scientific knowledge, but that's my understanding, at least as a patient. The stress that triggered it, likely, there's several factors, but one in particular definitely made it worse, is my youngest son, when he was 5 months old, was diagnosed with an aggressive form of brain cancer. And it was out of the blue. Healthy infant, was, breastfeeding, sleeping great, growing great, doing all the things you would ever expect your baby to do, and just started throwing up for a few days. And I took him in just to get fluids and see what was going on. And the doctor that was on call, or the ER physician that was working that evening, on a whim, decided to run a CT of his head and found a 3-centimeter tumor wrapped around his brainstem and spinal cord that was causing hydrocephalus and therefore triggering the vomiting. Had we not found it that night, or within a very short amount of time from that, he probably would not have made it, and he would have probably passed away, unfortunately. So it became a very urgent and dire situation that we addressed it. He wound up having emergency surgery. At this point, didn't know that it was cancerous, but addressed the tumor, got the tumor out to the best of our ability with that surgery, and then learned, 2 to 3 weeks later from pathology that the tumor was actually malignant and an aggressive form of brain cancer. So have been through the cancer treatment process with my son, which is just ironic that I also would not have hair alongside his experience too, which was rather confusing for some folks in and out of the hospital. But yeah, the stories that we tell as patients and caregivers are so critical and important in terms of decision making in healthcare, especially with where we're at today. And we look at outcomes-based care and these concepts that are so, admirable, and I think, idealistic maybe to a fault to some extent. They're grounded in this desire for us to be able to make things better for people, but you can't measure actual improvement if you don't know where we're starting from with the stories. And so I think, that in terms of helping inform decision making, and what are we doing as businesses, as vendors that are solving for unique use cases in the space, what are we doing as providers to provide better care? All of those decisions require informed decision making. And the only way we can do that is by hearing the patient's stories, because the reality is we can't make them up. We have our own that we can reference, but we really, truly need to hear others as well to make the best decisions as possible for the future of healthcare.
So it's an amazing story, and an amazing defense of stories in general. So thank you for that. And Erica, if you need to leave,
I do have to run, but I want to hear about you guys. So I'm glad this is live streaming.
The one thing that's wonderful about this is that you can drop off. It's totally okay, and then you can just come and watch the video later and see how everything ends. But I did want you all to meet Erica. This is the first time I've tried to have another patient kind of calling in.
Oh, nice.
And so I was hoping maybe we might be able to get Andrea Downing, maybe, but we'll see. But I'm happy that it worked. I'm happy that we can like see you and you're there, and we seem to be able to have a conversation like Zoom, but we're still streaming it. So that made me very, very happy.
Yes.
Well, it was lovely meeting all of you. I hope we can connect if you're on Twitter. Fred is happy to share my link. I'm the Great Chalupa on Twitter. But regrettably wasn't able to be there in person because I have some caregiving responsibilities that are keeping me in Dallas, unfortunately. But fortunately, there's a noble experience with being a caregiver too. And so I'm glad that I have that opportunity to do that as well. But sad to miss you all in person. Glad and grateful for
we all love you as part of community. Even though you're far away, please feel the warm fuzzies.
I love it.
Jenny,
Well, thank you, Fred.
all right.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Nice to meet all of you. Have a great one.
You too.
So I think when she stops, or maybe I can press. Oh, see, yeah, there it goes.
There we are.
And there we are. Okay, so welcome. Erica was lovely, wasn't she?
Yes. And she's so young.
She is. I mean, it really happened very early for her.
Wow.
And she decided she was going to take up running as her coping mechanism, which is not how I did it.
I did travel.
I did simple sugars. That was my so really pizzas were there and it was good. Thank you all for coming. I did already tell the camera this, but I wanted to tell you too. The basic idea of this, we were planning Datapalooza, and we were trying to contribute a plan to Datapalooza months and months and months ago. And we recognized even then that it was going to be hard for patients to come. But Datapalooza has always been a place that was very, very friendly to patients. And the patient stories were up front, patients on the main stage, patients scholarshiped, patients paid to speak. I think we've done generally a pretty good job at Datapalooza relative to other conferences. I think they're a cut above. And we wanted to continue doing that. And so we thought, well, why don't we just stream the whole thing, right? So because there's people who can't make it because of autoimmune issues, because of COVID. There's people who can't make it because there's a recession and everything's expensive and travel's expensive. And so we wanted to, we preferred to be like, well, let's stream everything. But we found out that was going to cost probably $100,000 type in the end, with single items cost like $30,000 or $40,000, which is not possible. I mean, you just can't, these conferences barely break even when they break even.
Right.
And so you can't just have, an extra $100,000 on the price tag without somebody paying for that. So what we decided way back 6 months ago was we're going to rent a suite. We are now in the suite that we rented, and we're going to get the hotel's good internet connection up here in the suite. It's not the hotel. The internet connection down there is not stable enough to stream from. So you can't do that. Also, it's in the basement, so you can't bring in a cell phone to stream.
Right.
Yeah.
So the solution is come up here. We'll have cell phones as backups for the good internet. So we have good internet here. We have a green screen if we need it. We've got all this stuff. The couches seem nice. Some little color. I got my walking gallery jackets here to have. No, I like having color in the background, So this is the one that Regina Holiday did for me.
Right.
And it was amazing because this was one that my Richard Sachs and Karen Herzog, who are two Ashkenazi Jews who live in San Francisco. And I only mention that they're Ashkenazi Jews because their daughter unfortunately passed away from one of the very rare diseases that you get when two Ashkenazi Jews marry each other. And they had done the genetic testing, and she got sick from what is essentially a new variant. They did not realize that their genes would come together to do that. And anyways, Richard did this, and we were having a conversation very simple like this when I was ranting and waving my arms. You've been in the same way with me. So you've seen me talk. I guess I'm doing it right now. So I was ranting and I was like, yeah, all the shit that I'm working on, it's all bullshit. It's all stuff that shouldn't be. I shouldn't have a job. I shouldn't have to deal with this stuff. Everything's upside down. I don't understand why it's my job to turn everything up. I was complaining and venting. And what he said, yeah, Fred, it seems like what you're trying to do is turn the world right side up. And so, and then he put this in the comment brackets, right? So that my comment on the world was that it shouldn't be upside down, and the world's upside down, and I shouldn't have to turn it right side up. And so this has become kind of my personal symbol. It brings me to tears even just thinking about that. I was so touched by his understanding of the way I see the world. And then Regina included that in her jacket that she did. So, and this is Ashish Patel, is my business partner. And I don't know if you know Regina Holliday's story very well, because she's the one who
Yes.
started.
Well, we just saw Susanna's jacket,
Okay.
and she just
explained.
yes.
Yeah.
So Fred is the name of her husband that passed away as
Okay.
well. Same name as me.
Okay.
But when she was, I believe, I'm pretty sure it was not a Harry Potter story. I think it was a when her husband was dying. I believe it was the Stephen King had just written a book that was about to come out, and they found a way to get a pre-published copy of the book so he could read it before he died. It's a really touching story. This might be a rough session. Anyways, so and then they requested 500 pages of his medical records to figure out what was going on, and they decided you were allowed at the time. I think it might still be true. I'm not sure. There's a bunch of HIPAA experts, but they're allowed to charge, and they charge 73 cents a page.
That's why I never
so
got
that-
my medical records.
Is that right?
Right.
And
That's
then
why
I
I
lost
said
them all.
This
business
is something that she tries to slip into as many of her arts as she can, is the 73 cents
Wow.
that kept her from easily getting a copy of the record. Of course, the juxtaposition, Stephen King giving a 500-page novel for free because this person was in the situation and making all that happen, and then turning around and trying to have the central document that was going on and having cost 73 cents a page, which is more expensive if you add it up than anything you can buy in Amazon. It's any book, right? It's like Gutenberg Bible expensive, right? It's so expensive. Collectible first editions sometimes go for those kind of prices. Anyway, so these are, and they're just beautiful. They're really just beautiful. That's the direct project.
It's really
and,
nice.
and this is a quote. So you won't like him when he's angry, which is, of course, the reason she made me into the Hulk. But Jonathan Bush said this about me on the stage. He said, Fred Trotter, he's talking to the government people in the crowd. I think it was at Datapalooza. He said, you better give Fred your data because you won't like him when he's angry. He'll sue you. And the funny thing was, I had not sued the federal government at that point. I have since then. I have sued the federal government for data. I just actually got done with my first case, my FOIA lawsuit. So I did not expect to go into all that. But part of the reason I did is that you all are associated with the Light Collective and Be Like Light as a movement. And that's something that Andrea Downing and I started a long time ago. And I know I met you at the retreat. Were you at the retreat?
No.
Neither one of you were at
I
the
wasn't
retreat.
even a part of
I don't
Light
even know.
Collective back then. I just joined in the
I'm trying to get it out of y'all. Y'all better come on.
So she's a patient. So I'm like, come on, so that she can learn some things. She doesn't.
She's just here to kind of learn
welcome.
from us as we
Thank you.
talk.
And
Right.
you are welcome. And as she just said, everyone's patient story is valuable. And what you've experienced is what makes you an expert in this room. And you are already an equal. So
Right.
there's a lingo that you might not know,
Right.
but you'll catch on and you'll be fine. And we want to hear from you.
Okay.
So that's true for you too. And so the Light Collective was, and Valenza, please correct me if I'm wrong in my summary of what I don't actually know exactly what the Light Collective has done since I kind of parachuted out, because it just got to be too much for me. I was overcommitted and I had something had to go. So I've stopped working with the Light Collective full time, or as much as it was anyways, which was one time it was like a full-time job. And, but Andrea Downing and I faced this situation with this Facebook problem. And setting aside the Facebook problem, what we realized is there was a bunch of organizations out there that were focused on patient privacy and making sure that patient privacy was respected. And Dr. Peel, for instance, runs an organization. EPIC is another organization that's really good, and EFF is really good. And so there were also organizations out there like Society for Participatory Medicine that were taking the lead in the patient voice for ensuring that good stuff happened with data. But there was no one who was focused on ensuring that a balance was met, that you could have the good things happen without having the privacy problems, and trying to really wrestle with the way social media was working and continues to work, around those issues. And so I think by the time we decided to start Light Collective, it was not just Andrea Downing and me. You were certainly involved by that stage and thought it was a good idea. And so we decided to start a nonprofit. It is actually
Yes,
501c3 now. It's been
yes,
approved.
yes.
You can see how dated my information is. But I'm extremely proud of Andrea's work and my work, and how that has turned out. And I hope that the Light Collective continues. That's the background that I know. I'm now going to stop talking. Valencia, what is the Light Collective now? What is today? What do you do? What are you working on now?
So our guiding principle is no aggregation without representation. So, and chime in when you need to, Christine. So
I'll let you go first.
So I'm going to talk about it in the sense of African Americans, right?
Yeah.
Our data.
Mm-hmm. Can I ask one question
Yes,
before you
yes.
move on?
Yes.
Could you tell me what's the significance of light, of it being the light collect? Is there any significance?
Well,
that was just something.
We're trying to shed light to people,
okay,
so that they can understand how impactful their data is.
Gotcha.
And collective is because we want to involve other organizations and other groups that kind of agree with the Light Collective guiding principles that we've come up with.
Okay.
I
Different
think that
grassroots organizations like yours.
Yeah.
The other idea that I think was important in the logo, that the lighthouse as a metaphor,
right,
is that the lighthouse is the thing that gives you clarity to understand where the risks are.
It's a beacon.
And you should decide how close you get to the rocks.
Okay.
But if you don't have a lighthouse, you can't make those decisions.
Right.
So there's a huge amount of that mental picture is a good metaphor for, look, if you're comfortable being on Facebook, if you feel like that's okay, if you feel like it's worth the risk to go close to the rocks, more power to you. That's great. But you should know the risks. You should be able to see and make those decisions for yourself. And so I think we try to kind of articulate that balance. And I'm not sure that metaphor always is great, but I think it's better than most.
Right.
Does that make sense?
I get it. Yes.
Okay.
And we've formed in the last year, we've gotten 2 grants now, and we built a community advocacy board that has different nonprofit organizations in Valencia. I don't know the number of CAB members we have.
We had about 13, and these are all grassroots organizations like yourself. Some of them knew nothing about. They're just going on Facebook. They're just talking about their diagnosis, sharing possibly too much without understanding the ramifications of that. So the importance of having grassroots organizations is to educate them. That's the biggest piece. We had a lot of webinars, a lot of I don't know if you were in our session today, but I wish you had been, with Dr. Maya Cummings.
No, I missed it.
Yes, amazing. Lusa Savage, she was one of the original people who was at the meeting. Susanna Fox, the lady you just met downstairs, she was at the original meeting 5 years ago. So we came together to just kind of put this organization together. We started from scratch, and we, in 5 years, have built this coalition. It's a coalition of organizations, and we're just trying our best to educate people.
Now you were going to start by talking about from the perspective of
African Americans. Okay, so when you think about, my sister was diagnosed, my aunt was diagnosed. There's something in our family history. Another aunt died of cancer. So my mother's the oldest of 18 children. If you just take all of the data of our family, the cancer risk factors, and just all of their collective data, that's worth a lot of money. Just my family. And all throughout the conference, they've been talking about how the data is, like Dr. Maya says, sliced and diced and sold to the highest bidder. So take all of us who are breast cancer survivors. Take all of the African Americans who are breast cancer survivors. Right. If you took all the data surrounding our diagnosis,
everything that we've been sharing online
for free
years,
for free.
We've had support groups online. So Yeah.
And we're just giving them information. We're just keep feeding information. And people don't know the harm in that. And for me, when I started on Facebook years ago, I didn't know the harm in it. But now I know, but I'm already there.
Yeah.
So
Me
it's
too.
kind of like, I'm already there. But
Decision's been made.
But now it's like coming to conferences, yoga. You know me and my yoga poses. For me, it's like I'm shedding. I want people to just be happy seeing me doing yoga. I want people to be happy when they see me wherever. They're like, "Where's Valencia?"
Right, exactly.
Because the fact of the matter is, I can't take any of it back. It's done.
Yeah.
But for my children,
Okay.
I am really trying to get my children to understand, like my daughter's over there right now. Like, don't start Instagram. Don't even start because they don't even know all the different ways that they're going to be getting all these ads targeted to them. If they Google something, here's more ads targeted to them. Things for them to buy, and they don't have the sense. Even adults don't have the common sense. I'm sitting here, so this is funny. I turned 50 in December. So I'm trying to lose so many pounds before I turn 50, right? I gotta look good.
I got it.
So I'm like, the phone hears me talk about, I need to start smoothies. I need to have juice. I need to do intermittent fasting. So what comes in my feed?
Oh yeah.
We're all going to be dieting with Valencia in a few hours.
All of that keeps coming into my feed. So it's kind of like, it feels like, oh my God, what can you really do besides turn your phone off? And I know people who do that. They're going to have a sensitive conversation. They actually turn their phone off. One of my friends, this is what she told me. She said, when me and my husband get ready to have sex, we will go in the back bedroom. They will turn their phones off. They remove their phones, even though they're turned off from the room. And I mean, this
is an amazing conversation.
I would have, if you'd asked me 10 years ago, I'd say those people are crazy.
Yeah.
If you ask me today, I'm like,
true.
Well, it's reasonable.
Yeah.
I mean, these people are probably right-thinking people.
Yeah.
They're just well-informed.
Yeah.
I'm not making the same choices I do. I'll have to say, it's like, when I go to sleep, it's like, hey, Alexa, would you remind me?
No.
Would you?
No Alexas in my house anymore.
Would you remind me, to pick up my medications and so I also take risks I shouldn't take. But part of it is I feel exactly like you. It's like it's
calculated risk.
It's a done deal.
Yeah.
Like Amazon already knows.
Yeah.
Like I'll tell you what, I do not know if I am a person who prefers brunettes or blondes.
But Amazon
Google
knows.
does.
Yeah, they all know.
Amazon knows. Facebook knows.
Yeah.
Like I don't know. You couldn't ask me. But the understanding that these technological solutions have of us is really profound.
Yeah.
And that's obviously a totally silly example. But if you're a person who's not sure whether or not they're gay, if you're a person who's wondering about whether or not they want to get married, if they're wondering where they should live, there's all these really profound questions that people have to ask, especially between the ages of 15 and 25, where the decisions you make at those times set your whole life course. And of course, you don't want to, it's a good thing your daughter's not here in the room because it's too much pressure for the average 17-year-old to think about how the decisions of the average 17-year-old are going to impact the rest of your life.
Right.
That's the central conflict between parents and kids. It's because there's all these really important things that happen at this young age. And we as a society just don't understand how that's being shaped and driven and derived and except to say that's probably not healthy. So there's always studies indicating that suicidal ideation, humiliation, shame, these things are on the rise, especially for young women, especially for people who have grown up with the iPhone. If you can't remember a time when you did not have an iPhone, like for us,
Right.
remember it was a
Yeah.
before and after.
Yeah,
That was a big
granddaughter.
presentation. The man with the collar
always
came
said she
up,
was
and he was
9.
like kind of like a priest, but he was waving a cell phone, and then everything was different, right? I mean, that's right. It was a wonderful time to be alive, but for a 7th grader or a 6th grader, they've never been without an iPhone. They've never not had Instagram, and they feel like they're on the stage all the time.
Yeah.
And it's a really profound
So
problem.
can I give you
Sure,
a short story? I grew up in Silicon Valley, so my idea of data and everything is very different than most. When I like to explain data to people who don't understand it, I tend to compare it to the music industry, right?
Okay.
And so I tell people, if you're thinking about data and you equate it to the music industry, then in that sense, my data is my song, right?
Okay.
And in order to bring my song out there, for that song to be played for everyone else, the collective data that's out there that I have and everybody else, it takes people to develop that song, right? But we still give credit to the songwriter and to the person who sings that music, right? And as they're going through their struggles in the music industry, models right now are fighting for their images, right? They can't post a picture of them on a beach somewhere else because someone else took that photo of them, right? And so now that's their property. And so what we're doing, and I've had several issues with social media. I've had my account hacked. I've had people fake accounts of mine take all of my information and put it on a whole separate site, claiming to be me, right? I've also had in the very early stages of Facebook where I had patient groups that we met together. We discussed pain meds. And then we also came across instances where people's houses were broken into because other people in the group were not in it for the right reasons. And I think there's a lot that goes along with that. Now we've got this new digital age. We've got these companies that are doing social listening. So remember years ago when you'd go in for market research, you'd be walking through the mall and they'd say, hey, can I stop you at half an hour? I'll give you $50 if you give me your perspective. Now they don't need to pay you. They get your perspective already. And we're freely giving it, right? And we're giving it to them. And there's great advantages that come from some of it, right? I like the convenience of some of the things that are there. But I'm also a person, and I look at data very differently than most because I'm a Medicare patient. So I'm on Social Security disability, which means I also can't work. It means I can't take money because my healthcare is with the federal government and not with a payer. And so I look at data in a way that here I am being forced to live in poverty, but I'm also giving every bit of my information to CMS, to my hospital system, to all of these people who are taking this information and doing great things with it, right?
Some of the time.
Some of the time.
Yep.
Some new developments,
definitely
technologies, they're using it.
And some of the time it's good.
And sometimes it's good, sometimes it's not. And for me, the issue around data is really like with Andrea and everyone in Light Collective, is that agency over our data, right? That ability to be able to use that data for our own care in our own lives, right? And how do you structure things around that so that we're not being taken advantage of? And instead of in these processes being like the target, we're actually now a partner.
Okay, so my question is, what is Lighthouse doing?
Like collective.
Light Collective.
Collective.
Y'all got me on the Lighthouse.
Light
Collective. So
you're in the right area. We're good.
Okay. Light Collective is doing what to? I heard Valencia say her information is already out there.
We've got training courses, right? That we have worked with another group, and we've set up a what is it, Valencia? You've been working on the program that we're bringing in other groups with the online training course.
Yeah.
Can you kind of go over what the online?
We have some modules. It's kind of like cyber hygiene, right?
Okay.
These are things that you can do. Practical things.
Okay.
Your password, making sure it's a certain way.
Okay.
So that you're not using the same password for everything.
Right. Okay.
Your
using a VPN and a blocker, little bits of information that will teach you through the courses to kind of protect yourself in
we
your
can
group.
connect.
Okay, so I was going to say, how can I take the course?
Yeah. So,
And if anyone out there is interested, it's at lightcollective.org. And I believe
you could just let me send you all the stuff you need. So,
she's going to send it to her
Well-
for everyone else out there.
Oh, yeah.
That's right. And
Yes, we're
gonna
also
get it.
live,
We're going to
so-
put it on our, I think there's like a show note system, and I have to go back probably over the weekend and watch all the videos that I've made and all the promises. Fred, this is a promise. I said that there would be links to these in the resources so that when you go to the video, you'll be able to go to the notes and click and get to some of the educational resources that the Light Collective does.
And we're looking for anyone out there listening. We're also looking for other organizations to work with us, to take our courses. And we're looking for those who work in the tech industry to really look at our guidelines that we've put together as a collective with all of the nonprofits that Valencia mentioned. And we do have 7 guiding principles,
Yes.
right, that we've put out. And if you're interested in looking at that and finding how your company can really work better with patients around our data, that's available as well. So you can contact Valencia. You're all on LinkedIn, I'm assuming,
Yeah.
watching. So
Valencia at lightcollective.org.
collective.org.
That's
And
easy.
But I think, Fred, can I bring up an issue that I brought up in a session downstairs with Dr.
Please.
Maya?
Please.
Yeah.
That it's one that we don't talk about much, is really that Medicare population of people, right? I've been on Medicare now for 20 years, basically milking the system, if you ask my dad. Not that I don't want to work, but really the options with my medical and my issues. I'm rare disease patient, still trying to figure it out. I'm at the doctor more times than I am anywhere else, right? But again, that information on these underserved populations that are forced to live in poverty to get that care, we're also completely taking advantage of them. So how is it that we as like a society or as a system really look at those underserved populations? We talk about it a lot, but yet we still continue to use people in these ways. And not to bring up like anything, but like with Henrietta Lacks, right? All of my friends in research were excited when a statue went up in her honor, right? Which is great, the recognition. And I said, that's not enough.
No.
I said, it's
Especially
great.
when her family is still
It
living in
is
poverty.
Still living in poverty, right? And so it's great to put up a thing and say, we recognize her efforts, but until we have a systematic change where this is not going to happen to anyone else, all we're doing is putting a Band-Aid on it. When I look at statues in my area, I don't know what they're about. It could be a statue of, whoever it is. I don't know. I'm not reading about it, right? It's not a way to really educate the population as to what's happened. And it's not a way to make up for the way that we've treated people and to still continue to do it and feel good about ourselves because, we recognize something. How do we get people to look at the bigger picture? If we can figure out how to take care of our underserved and underrepresented populations, we would figure it out for everyone else.
So, I wish I could.
And I know there's no answer here with all of us. We're kind of just saying it and putting it out there.
And all I can do is provide more context. So, people in Africa were extraordinarily reluctant. Nations in Africa were extraordinarily reluctant to share samples of the Ebola virus because they knew that the Ebola virus samples that would be used to create vaccines, and then the vaccines would be sold back to African nations. And of course, we in the West want Ebola vaccines. We're terrified of Ebola. That would be awful. We want our drug companies to make those things, but is that fair to then sell that back to the people who suffered,
who built it for you?
Who essentially built it for you. Yes.
Right.
So that's not a question. So what I would say is that question is the kind of question that is harder the more carefully you think about it.
Yeah.
And here's how I think about it, because I am a data vendor. I sell the results of aggregated data, and there's a huge difference. I hope that I can say that there's a spectrum, and that I'm on a slider here that's on the better side, that's compatible, I hope, with the principles of the Light Collective, which is one of the reasons why I was so startled by the original kind of Andrew Downing found a very significant flaw in the way Facebook was working. It was revealing the real names of people who were BRCA positive. That was the kind of thing she brought to me that just blew my mind that was happening. And for me, it was an affront to my professional ethics because I was thinking the way you do this is the way I do it, and this is okay, and then this is totally not okay.
Mm-hmm.
So think about it as a spectrum where you have Henrietta lacks way over here, you have the Ebola virus way over here, where you are taking that valuable data, and then you are turning around and not only not providing back something of equal value, but you're charging again, right? So that's the kind of like all the way to the one side.
Right.
Now imagine this. How many of you are mothers? Your mother. I'm an uncle.
I'm an aunt.
You're an aunt.
Yes.
I'm an uncle.
I'm a
so I'm not
godmother,
father.
an
Okay.
amazing aunt.
So let me ask you the question.
Leave it there. Yeah.
If you could contribute your DNA and ensure that your nibbling is the term, apparently I didn't realize this, nibbling is both nieces and nephews. Ensure that your nibblings never got cancer and that you could do the same thing for your children. That you could contribute your DNA, but your children will never get cancer because of it. Would you consider that for a bargain? Answer, no question. Right? I would absolutely donate my data if I got something back
Right.
that was of great value. You don't have to be paid for your
No, it
medical
doesn't
records
have to
necessarily.
be. No.
Although that is okay.
But it could be
It's
possible.
okay.
Right,
That's
right,
not wrong.
Right.
It's just that there are other ways to strongly remunerate patients. Well,
Yes.
let me tell you how CMS chooses to share data. And we are one of the first commercial vendors to do work with CMS's data. What CMS says, Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services.
Thank you.
There's only one M in the acronym, but there's two M's in the words.
I saw that.
And I find that confusing. Every time I say it, I find that confusing and difficult to swallow. CMS runs Medicaid, just as to your point.
Yes.
And we take it and we turn around and we do aggregated studies. The aggregation level is extraordinarily high. We don't ever talk about a single patient. Not only do we not talk about a single patient, we don't talk about 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 is the first number of patients that we can create a cohort around. Anything underneath 11, we can't work with.
It doesn't
Now,
give you enough information.
Now I want to be clear. If you get Medicare data from someone other than CMS, that rule does not apply. That is only something that is imposed upon my company by CMS. And we compete against companies that sell exactly the same data taken from a different stage of the gathering process. And we have to comply with CMS's rules, which from a privacy perspective are ridiculously conservative. To compare, NHS in England has a aggregation level of 3 patients. You have to have like 3 patients in order to do that. 11 patients is a very, very high threshold. It also means, by the way, that we really can't do any kind of rare disease work.
Yes, I was going to say
Right?
that eliminates
our capacity to do so. So I can't actually ever do anything to help you. And here's the kind of things that we can do. We did, and the way we make money is we work with life sciences companies, drug companies, and we will give them information. And we did, for instance, a flu study one time where we figured out a way to reach 1,500 patients, guesstimate, who needed to have annual flu vaccination who were not getting it. Now that means, when I say 1,500, we actually probably reached more, but they did a study and estimated that there were 1,500 people who were going to live. I don't know how this is going to, I'm going to cry. There are 1,500 people who are going to make it one more year. Maybe they would die the next year. Because most of the people who die from the flu vaccine are elderly. But there's one more Christmas, more set of birthdays. Shit. Give me a second. We might have to let you go on without me for a second. But anyways, so that's a study we did with a life science company with the evil pharma people, right? Where we were able to make a change in the world that was, and they say things like fucking life years, like it was 1,500 life years, because someone might die in the next year because they get a bad COVID. And if you're 80 years old, you might die from something else anyways. So it's not like we saved 1,500 lives. It was 1,500 people who would make it at least another year.
Right.
So
if I could live another year, I would want that.
Right. So
kind of depending on your quality of life, though.
So the
Well,
and I want to be clear. Like, this is one of the studies that we are the most proud of, and sometimes, sometimes we don't have any effects. Sometimes we have similar effects. Sometimes people get they have very complicated late stage cancer and they get an extra treatment or something. So we don't always have a knock it out of the park result like that. I consider that a pretty big deal. And we also fund journalism work where we have worked with ProPublica and U.S. News, and we did a study on skilled nursing facilities and COVID with Wall Street Journal last year. Wall Street Journal. And so we do an incredible amount of work for good under a paradigm that profoundly and sometimes almost problematically supports patient privacy. So for me, working day in and day out with essentially a kind of unwritten set of rules that are very, very similar to what are now written sets of rules because of the Light Collective's work. Like these were coalesced. Like we need to write these down, because I felt so convinced when I first heard from Andrea what was happening in her Facebook groups. Like, this is totally on the Henrietta Lacks side. This is secret data. They don't even know their data is being taken. The good in the world is not good. And then we kept digging, and we found things like people were using Facebook to find people who would be vulnerable to anti-vaccine messages, which were causing measles outbreaks. So this data it's not just, so when we think about like big pharma
They're not the worst.
is not the worst.
No,
it's the worst is someone in North Korea or China or with a radical group who is going to use the data that somebody put out using Goodwill, or break into a house because of some, that's the micro version.
That's the micro.
So we started paying attention to this spectrum, and we realized that, maybe not everything that my company has done has been right. I think if I looked carefully, maybe I'd find something that I wasn't 100% proud of. Now, there's nothing that I would say is evil, but there might be some things that, we should adjust. But the level of care that me and frankly most of my competitors put into working with this data, the people who are here at Datapalooza, it's the choir, right? Andrea and I were preaching to the choir. It's like, you all should be careful with the data. You all should be respecting privacy. You all should be doing good with the data. You don't find at Datapalooza, Health Datapalooza, the people who are doing the really profoundly evil things with the state. They're not here. They're other places.
Right.
Now that does not mean that I am ethically off the hook. Right? If somebody wants to challenge me and say, Fred, you did this study and that was not appropriate, or we're just wrong, right? You just did it wrong. You made mistakes. That needs to come out. Like, we need to be ethically disciplined in our work too, right? Because that's just the way the world should work. And I want to talk about this. I'm sorry for weeping in front of you. That was not what I was expecting to do. But
Before you start talking about that, I have one
So-
question.
Sure.
Have you all gotten any pushback from any of the social media outlets for the work that Light Collective is doing?
well, to say yes,
Well,
it's an
at
understatement.
the beginning.
Yeah.
So we got Facebook called into Congress, and they asked them about our stuff. I'm a little bit sore about, and Andrea's too, about the fact that we weren't also called into Congress too. Like, I would have preferred to have us sitting next to Facebook saying,
right.
here's what we say. And when they say ABC,
Yeah,
I was just like,
rebuttal.
please call on me. Please
Right,
call on me.
right.
Hear what Andrea has to say about that, because that's not what Andrea's experience was,
Right.
et cetera. So I'm a little bit disappointed that didn't happen.
And that nothing was enforced either, right?
Right.
There were
Nothing was enforced.
guidelines that were
Well,
there
we-
were
we-
things that came up.
And all that was basically a debacle. We did have one major policy change. So the problem that Andrea found is much harder to attack now. It's not as easy as it was.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so we two things. We got Facebook called in front of Congress. That pleases me no end. And then we also got I think this is something that Andrea really deserves a lot of credit for. I hope I have part of the credit, but she certainly deserves credit. I don't know of anybody else whose activism has caused Facebook to change their security architecture.
Okay.
So there is, Facebook does not work the way Facebook did,
No.
because now, did they admit they did something wrong?
Never.
No.
And if you go to Europe, there's a lot of fines going out, and it's easy to pay a fine.
So,
Okay.
and I think
They pay some fines here too.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, they pay
we
some
pay a
money.
lot of
Okay.
fines.
So, and and forgive me if you don't mind, but
Mhm.
for the sake of the stream, I'm going to quickly summarize the situation, which I think you all might be aware of.
Okay.
I don't know that you're into the privacy stuff enough to be, kind of talking about, but this thing on the screen here, let me just share the
Yeah,
screen.
I don't think anyone
I don't
in
think
the
it
audience
can
see
see
it.
the screen either. I'm going to put it in the middle here, and then I'm going to share the screen.
It's basically the
Entire
ruling for the
screen.
Good RX, just while everybody's waiting for Fred to kind of navigate
Do
the screen
things.
here.
All right. So I hope you can see that. This is a Good RX response to the FTC settlement. One of the things that we said to the FTC, we filed an FTC complaint,
Mhm.
and we said, FTC, Facebook has violated the PHR breach notification rule. In the United States, there's two paradigms for privacy, and one privacy is based on HIPAA, and it's for physicians and hospitals and everything else. And the other is for everybody, and that's the FTC breach notification rule if you are gathering healthcare data. We asserted that Facebook should be considered under the health breach notification rule. And while we were going through that process, we found the FTC finally told us that they had never enforced the rule.
Mhm.
They had never enforced the rule against anyone, much less Facebook.
Right.
For the first time, the FTC has essentially sued under the breach notification rule.
Lucia says this is
It's
the
twice.
second time.
Yeah.
In Ohio, something like 4
Yeah,
years
there was
ago.
another company a couple years ago. This would be the second time.
Well,
we've-
Yeah.
so here's the thing.
That's what came up in the panel.
Right.
Because we all
Well, that's
said
what
one
Lucia
too,
said.
and Lucia
Well, so
said no.
I
it's
wish
two.
Lucia was here. I wish Lucia was here because, in my experience, when I disagree with Lucia, Lucia's right. That's been my experience. And
Yeah.
unfortunately, we've had that experience multiple times. So, Lucia, if you're watching this, my apologies. So, what I think might be the difference, and I could be right, but again, if Lucia says so, I think she's probably right. But my understanding is that the FTC has gone after PHR companies, but not under the authority of the PHR breach notification rule, right? So I'm going to find out. Like Lucia will take my phone calls, and I'm going to figure that out. But the FTC announcement said it was the first time, right? So it's not just me saying it was the first time. The FTC
Right.
themselves
We
said it
all
was the
thought
first
it was
time.
too, so don't worry.
Right.
So if Lucia is right, then that's one I'm going to have to talk to her because I'm thinking about digging into this because of this. So, well, this is going to be the brief history. They've never used the rule before, or maybe it's the second time they've done it before, but they think it's the first time. I think it's the first time, or the first time I've heard of it. And it was from actions that GoodRx did in 2019 and 2020. It's a long time ago.
Mm-hmm.
And here's the interesting thing about this as I dug into it. GoodRx had a blog post, which they took down, where they took responsibility and said,
Right.
we've messed up.
Right.
Mhm.
We've messed up. And I went to archive.org and I found it, and I've got this little link system, which I'll share with you.
Right.
I found that, and it said, we did not do a good enough job here, and we were apparently injecting data of our people into Facebook and essentially painting them with their medications, so that if you did a query using the advertising network of people who were on a particular medication, you get GoodRx's customers potentially as a result. Which, I mean, it's just as bad as, she's
Yeah.
the face you're making is exactly
The
representative.
face
of
we all
everything.
made in
The
the
face
we
beginning
all
too.
made, too.
It's
Now we're
like,
just
and
used
how
to-
do they think this is okay?
Well, so here's the thing.
Yeah.
In 2019, 2018, 2017, 2020, I was telling patients, everyone was telling patients, go on Facebook, find your patient community. Frankly, that's still good advice. It's still not a terrible idea. It's probably still worth it, even everything we know of privacy, to
Right.
find a community of people who can help you with your disease. But I was just telling every patient I could see, Facebook is the way, Twitter is the way, go find your patient community, and
Yeah.
join with your people, find
Right,
your
right.
tribe of people who are
Yeah.
fighting whatever it is you're fighting.
Yeah.
I don't know anything about what you're going through, but they do. And this is a good thing. It's wonderful. And
Yeah.
everybody was enthusiastic about it. Everybody thought it was good. And so when GoodRx in 2020 says, we messed up, we really didn't understand what it meant to be working with Facebook and the ecosystem. We didn't realize that when we put in groups for advertisement, that would kind of leak into Facebook's database on people. We just didn't get it.
Right.
And as a result, we messed up. We're sorry. We're not doing that anymore. We're hiring a privacy expert. We're moving on. Right. So from what they did, it was a screw up. It was a big screw up, but they made a mistake. They kind of owned it. They moved it forward. I look at that and it's like, well, I was screwing up at that time too. I mean, I was saying the wrong thing. I didn't know.
Right.
Nobody really understood Facebook. All this stuff came out, right? There's the social media movement. There's just so much that we did not have any idea. I was totally shocked when Andrea showed me the thing, the problem. I was completely shocked. I was like, there's no way, Andrea.
Yes.
There's no way it works like that.
Right.
That's what I told her. You can see that data because you're an admin in the group. There's no way they're publishing it. But Andrea, I'll check for you. I'll make sure.
Right.
And then I went and I downloaded the entire list of these women's names and locations. BRCA positive.
Yes.
Right. And I was like, Andrea, you're right. This is a problem. I mean, and the metaphor that Andrea and I use is like, imagine someone inviting you to their home and saying, I think I have plutonium in my backyard. I'm like, you don't have plutonium in your backyard. You're crazy. You don't have plutonium in your backyard. No one's got plutonium in the backyard. That's not how backyards work. And then you go in their backyard and there's a little glowing, throbbing thing. And it's like, you have plutonium in your backyard. You have plutonium in your backyard. You've totally got that problem. So it was the string. I remember where I was. When I started to see the stream of names download, I remember the room I was in. I remember the city I was in. I was at a family reunion. Right. And I remember all of it because it's just like, this is not right. I'm not supposed to be getting this. Right. Anyways, so we were all confused about how it worked. We were all confused. GoodRx was confused. They made an apology. But now, and this is actually the interesting thing, I don't actually have a problem with GoodRx did in the past because it seemed like they learned from it, they moved on. And we need to have restorative justice, right? We need to have a way for people who
messed up.
I apologize for the language, but people who fuck up should be able to restore themselves. And it seemed like that's what had happened.
Right.
But now, look at this.
We do not agree with the FTC's allegations, and we admit no wrongdoing.
Where you see it? That's the wrongdoing is the thing. Where is that?
Entering into the settlement allows us to avoid the time and expense of protracted litigation.
There it is. We admit no wrongdoing. They say that twice, once in bold.
Yeah.
This is the first mention. We did nothing wrong.
They didn't know you captured it from the other.
Well, I mean, they did take it down. They should have known that archive.org captures everything, right? I mean, everybody knows that. Right?
Well,
knows that.
you think everyone knows that. We're
Right.
finding out not everybody knows
Maybe
that.
not everybody knows
right?
that. So here's the interesting thing. I don't actually care that much. I think it's good that the FTC is enforcing the rule. That makes me happy. It's old news as far as the mistake they made. I don't really care about that much. It seems like they've fixed themselves, and as long as they're not continuing to inject. But what that tells me right there
So do it again.
is that they're doing it again. Their business model is selling patient data, and this is not a good actor in the healthcare system. So that sentence right there tells me that they are not on the right side of the light collectives policies. They are not on the right side of anything. And I think as a result, not because of what they did in the past, but because of the letter right now, we admit no wrongdoing. That is a letter, from my perspective, this is a letter for investors. This is a letter to people who might be thinking of suing them right now. This is a letter that the lawyers wrote, and this is not an integrity letter. This is not.
Right.
This is not just a non-apology. Like you've seen so many non-apologies. This is a full-on denial. It's not even trying to be an apology. It's just like, I'm sorry your feelings were hurt. Like that's a non-apology.
Right.
It's just like, this is like you were wrong to have your feelings.
Right.
Like I did nothing wrong. This is your problem. And that's not okay.
But I would say too, like with everything that's going on, and we've talked about this in the Light Collective meetings, is that we are not trying to push people off of social media, right? We understand that there's connections and there are things, but we want people to do these things safely, to go, like you said, with their eyes open, right? And really kind of know what we're putting out there, right? I do agree with you. This is total
Well, I
bullshit
guess
on
really,
it, really. Sorry, I didn't mean to say that either.
I don't know. I guess this is now PG-13.
LinkedIn is all adults. We're
It's
okay.
all adults.
We're all
Yeah.
adults.
You go.
But I do think there's so many conversations that need to be taking place, right? And I think what we find, and Andrea and I have also been a part of CHI, which is the Coalition for Health and AI. We were two of the patients, and Stacy Hurt was also another patient that was involved with that. But when you look at the discussions that were taking place and the people that are in that meetings, were a very small percentage of that, right? And really, we have that focus of the individual patient in mind, right, of how our data is being used on the security and the issues. But I do still see, I'll tell you, is a lot of people still pushing patients to be on those platforms and share their stories. So I was just at another conference, and I won't say any names, but this conference specifically was pushing for patient groups to be on social media. And one of the questions that I asked, along with Tina with Own Your Crohn's, at the end of it was, this is great that you want us to be on these platforms. We need to share our stories. We need to talk about this and have that collective. But what is everyone doing to protect us
Right.
as you're pushing us that way?
Right.
Okay.
And so really, I think there has to be a discussion on, if we are, we do have to have social media and platforms to kind of do this. Where are the safe options for us? Are the companies looking at guidelines created by like Collective, right? We do have a set of 7 principles, and I can't tell you them off of my head. It's been a long 2 days.
Well, I need flashcards. I'm going to get some flashcards.
Yeah.
Now that I know there's 7 to know, I need to be able to rattle them off.
Yeah,
Right.
there are 7 guiding principles, and I don't know if you memorize.
No, I don't have a memorized.
And it has been
Well,
a long
maybe
2
that's-
days of
Maybe
conference.
that's the Christmas gift for everybody. Send each other.
Go to our website. They're there.
They're
Yeah,
there.
and if you go to the website, you'll see those guiding principles. But I think one of the things that really has to happen is real open conversations. By the time I get into a conversation around data, all of the decisions have already been made.
Oh, that's
Right.
really interesting.
So when we get in there, we're kind of that afterthought of how do we now fit
Yeah, your
you
job is to
into
rubber
this?
stamp what we've already decided to do.
Right.
We've got a
Right.
business model, and you're here
And
to
here
make it
is.
okay.
And we have to say this too. Excuse me. It's not even about the patients. So
Yeah.
my 76-year-old mom is on Facebook.
Yeah.
And I'm like, Mom, what is all of this? Don't click this. Don't click this. It's like, what is all this stuff coming?
How many
Advertisements and this and that. And I'm like, people are on social media to see their children, their grandchildren, whomever, right? To be nosy, right? To be nosy, right? But they don't even understand. But my mom has taken all of our webinars. She's always on. So she's learning.
Your whole family,
Yes.
Leslie's family is on all
'Cause
our
it's
webinars.
like, people need to know this information. They need to know, the young, the old, everyone.
And how many of us? I told Mike and Andrea in a Light Collective meeting one time, I said, we need to establish a course for older people, right? Because how many of us have to walk through our parents who have, opened emails and clicked links, and it's not just Facebook, it's everything, right? And so
Phishing
really,
emails,
just all of those conversations, we focus on patients, but there's a general need for the public
Yes.
to understand these things, right? It's great that patients are getting involved, but if the mass population of people doesn't care,
Right.
we're going with a majority here. And so I think the bigger part of the conversation has to be held outside patient communities.
I think that's really an interesting insight.
It
that's
is
really
So
because
are
all of
you-
these things are going to affect everybody down the line, regardless of how you're interacting, whether you're a patient right now or not.
Yes.
This is not just medical data. This is
All the data.
all of
Well,
it.
and I think what people understand is that all the data is the medical data, right?
Yeah.
It's not like if you're getting say, I don't know if you saw the example of the woman who wanted to keep her pregnancy secret.
Mm-hmm.
Right? That was a beautiful article. Of course, the original article was about Target and how Target reverse engineered that young
and then
woman
they
was
ended
pregnant.
up-
And they sent the advertisements. And apparently, on that, through friends of our friends, apparently the big signal is hand lotion. If a young woman starts coming in for hand lotion and she has not come in for hand lotion before, she suddenly starts getting a lot, that means that her skin is changing and she's going through this stuff, and it's
Mm.
apparently a bright line signal that you're pregnant. So that's one of the things. It's one of the signals that Target was able to use to figure out if somebody's pregnant.
Makeup companies were using the same sort of things,
Same
right?
sort of things.
Kind of offering things to people to monitor your skin conditions, but giving them a lot more information than you think you're giving them.
That's right. So there's all these signals that we think of as just daily life, Amazon purchases, all this kind of stuff, which in fact is revealing extraordinarily revealing stuff. And I think the most recent article was the woman who, and unfortunately, she had a miscarriage. So it really was a profoundly painful experience where she was a reporter too. She did everything she could to not let the internet know that she was pregnant, and then she lost the baby, and then the internet figured out that she was pregnant. So she started getting all of these ads for the first time, baby carriages and all this stuff in the mail after she'd had the miscarriage. So this is really
I got to say this, and I probably shouldn't say it publicly.
That's the camera.
No,
that's the camera.
I know, but I'm talking to you right now.
Not say it.
No, I'm gonna say it.
I'm like, if it's a message for them, look directly at them.
So this another scenario. I looking into refinancing. I'll say it the nice way. Refinancing my house, right?
Yeah. Okay.
So I go through the process of congratulations. You are approved to refinance your house, whatever, right? When I tell you my phone was blowing up, girl, I'm just like, what? All of these companies. And I'm like, so the credit union that I used, it was so bad, y'all. It was so bad. I swear, every 5 minutes, I'm getting a call. I'm getting emails. I mean, it was so bad. It was terrible.
So Medicare lists get sold all the time. And I constantly,
when I go
day,
to my credit union again, I am going to mention that because this deserves an email to somebody in the corporate office.
Here's the problem. It wasn't your credit union.
Yeah.
It was when they did a credit
check.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
The company, Experian, all this kind of other stuff.
Equifax.
And
if you look at Experian and Equifax too, I was just on my sites because I was freezing my credit for some other things. They do market to you, right? It says like, here, do you opt into our ads? I
need to change that.
There's a lot.
It was so bad, y'all. I cannot believe. It was terrible.
How do you get out of those?
Well, one of those things too.
And I got one more for you. Wait.
How do you get out? I want to know.
This is public knowledge. So my husband, he filed for divorce. Lo and behold, I'm getting.
I'm like,
wait, no, but listen. I'm getting all. You can crop this part out. I'm getting.
It's a lie.
Oh shit. Why am I getting all of these, not phone calls, but letters in the mail from real estate saying, if you have to sell your house, from attorneys?
I can tell you.
It's public record.
Yes, that's
it's in the newspaper.
It's in the courts.
Right.
And the courts publish those, and newspapers and everybody else.
I'm like, what the fuck?
Yeah. Well, I would say one of the things we tell people to, like Andrew, is like shutting off your ads, right? When they're looking at things, like looking at your Google account and shutting off personalization. I live in California, so I lucked out in some of the aspects, right? With California, we have CCPA, which is a consumer privacy.
Now California has some of the best rules. Laws.
And so if you noticed on some apps where it says these things and accept our cookies, where it says like,
and do not accept the cookies ever.
But with some apps, if you're not a California resident, they have your data. You don't have an option there, right? So I think those things. I always tell people in California, if they are making laws with the people who are building the technology, right? Because we're obviously building it and making laws to protect ourselves. why does not every other state follow suit with the same line?
Yeah, because all these engineers like
Because
oh, yeah,
all
we need
these
to fix
engineers
this.
are writing
Oh,
the
we need to
fix
programs,
this, we
but
need to
then
fix this.
saying we need laws
Yeah.
because
Or,
I'm writing this and I don't want my information out
or-
there.
or the Facebook executives who won't let their kids use Instagram.
Oh yeah. There's some great movies that I'm gonna send you to watch. Amazing. Yeah.
So just before we leave the GoodRx thing, and
Oh, yeah.
by the way, you guys have been amazing guests. This is the best video ever.
I know it's we're
So
talking too much.
So good. But GoodRx, thing about GoodRx is the purpose of GoodRx is to allow the discounts from pharmaceutical companies to be exposed to patients. So because of weird laws, one of the reasons why the pharmaceutical the prices are so huge and intimidating is because they're expecting insurance companies to pay them, and they just are not in a position for legal reasons to have two prices. But
Right.
for whatever reason, they can have discounts, discount codes, and rebate programs.
Stupid.
It's weird, right? But a lot of what we experience is because of just weirdness. But from the drug company's perspective, they want everybody who will benefit from the drug to be using the drug, and if somebody has trouble paying, they will step in and they'll give a discount code. And what GoodRx is an app that you use at the pharmacy in order to look up the database of discount codes that are from pharmaceutical companies. So if you don't have insurance, GoodRx is this critical application. And
Or if you're on Medicare too, because I just had
because you
some
don't necessarily
prescriptions
have a
that
Part
were
D
not
program.
covered. Well, I'm on Part D, but I had
You are on Part D.
I am on Part D, but
Okay.
I had some prescriptions. They don't
Were not
cover
covered.
compounding. They don't cover certain other drugs for
So-
Medicare.
So here's the thing: you knew about GoodRx. Did you know about GoodRx? Okay, if you used
I
it or
know
heard of it?
about GoodRx, but the question that I want to ask about GoodRx is data generated from GoodRx when you use that
Yes.
particular app.
Yes.
It
Yes.
gives
Yes,
your
that's
data.
what
That's
they
the
were
problem.
trying
Data.
for.
is
Yes.
that's the reason why this
Yeah.
whole problem exists.
Okay.
Right.
And here's the thing: I don't know of a competitor to GoodRx. Do you?
Yeah.
Right. Only
Yeah.
just
Do you?
going to
That's
Yeah.
it. It's like it's
There isn't
GoodRx
really.
or nothing.
right.
So what you're talking about is privacy with this company versus not getting what is in some cases a life-saving discount
right.
to drugs.
My drug
It's an
went from
impossible choice.
400, right? My regular Medicare prescription cost would have been 400 with, with my thing. With the GoodRx, it brought it down to 70. Right? So there was a
So they are
huge
giving-
Which is
savings
that
there
is
for
a-
me on
and
a drug.
I don't mean to pry, but for a huge number of people, that is a buy versus not buy.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
it was a
It
buy
is.
versus
It
not
is.
buy. I
Right.
actually told my doctors I can't fill this, and they said they looked up the codes on GoodRx and they sent me the links and said this will get it to you for cheaper,
Oh, okay.
right?
So-
And
my
these,
doctor
but see, these
referred
companies
me
don't. GoodRx does not have to do the things that they're doing.
to
Period.
give you.
So with this breach notification, with them having to pay,
Oh, I mean, if I was a younger man, I would be thinking about starting, a company, and I'd call it not GoodRx.
Well, you do have Mark Cuban Pharmaceuticals, so I think you can go
Well, there
along
you
that
go,
same
yes,
lines
yes.
of
Or I could
really
say,
renaming.
Trotter's not a great guy, but at least he's not GoodRx. I mean, there's just so many names. There's so many versions of this that I think would work.
Not
And I'm sure there's.
Or
there
Good
is-
RX.
Oh yeah, that's
You
good.
go Good RX.
So
Sorry.
we do this.
It's
all
in
night
a
long.
long
We
2
do
days
this
of
all
conference.
night. So, but I definitely think this is precisely the decision point. Decide that this is the consequence of having an open
Right,
door
right,
policy.
right, right,
right.
Sometimes get some noises. This is precisely the decision that damned if you do, damned if you don't.
Yeah.
That the Light Collective was formed to address.
right.
Which is patients should not be put in a position where they don't have an alternative. They
Mhm.
have to do something, and they don't have any choices.
Mhm.
And so that's the reason I think why that GoodRx is such a critical thing is they have, from my perspective, gotten to be a monopoly player. And I actually think that in general, they've done that by being pretty good at their work, right? I mean, you look
Yeah.
up GoodRx and you're there at the pharmacy. It's actually pretty fast to find your
Mhm.
medication and
Mhm.
figure out if you're qualified for a discount.
Mhm.
They do a decent job.
Yeah.
On balance, they're probably good for the world, but that does not give them the excuse
Right.
to to not take responsibility for patient privacy.
Right.
And I would say the one thing is that we are still in this learning phase, right? If this is a new space for all of us and we are going to make mistakes.
Yeah.
Everyone is going to make mistakes. And it is, we all refer to it, and we heard Dr. Maya say it, and everyone else. This is the wild, wild west,
Yeah.
right?
Mhm.
And there are no laws yet governing these things because there was no data like this 20 years ago. So there's an adjustment period that we all have to go through.
Yeah, and what they did have, they couldn't use in the way that you can now.
And now you've got this amazing data, clinical grade data that's coming in from all of these places. Now I think it's just more around that communication, right?
Yeah,
We're at a new stage.
Mhm.
I've spoken with economists around the globe who talk about data as really being this equalizer,
Yeah.
right? We did the industrial revolution wrong, is what they said, and we made that line between rich and poor even bigger. And we have a chance now with data
To not do the same thing
not
again.
do the same thing,
Mhm.
to educate people around the value of collective data, right? To come away from this very siloed look at how we do things and think about community and the benefits that we're going to have all together. We have housekeepers.
They're
But
cleaning my room.
They're cleaning our room. But I
Which
think
is a
it
kindness.
is that.
Yes.
But I think it is really that educating not just patient populations, but our general
Yeah,
populations
absolutely.
around collective
Absolutely.
data and how we help ourselves and our communities with that collective data. I always thought I was a burden, right? I was sick all my life. I always thought I'm never going to be anything, never going to do anything. I got to this side of the industry where I realized that this whole industry runs off of me and all of my friends.
Right.
I flipped that mode of
Right,
thinking in my
yeah.
head when I
Right.
was in the patient group and the patient organizations. My focus was, you are a patient, right? When I got to this side and met other people who gave me a different idea of how things work, it's now like, oh no, you're no longer just a patient. You are the most integral part of this entire process. And I think part of it is really reframing that idea that we have of patients, of what they can handle, right? I'm fighting now to get data of my own that people don't think I can handle. But honestly, giving it to me, I can handle it better than the 30 different places where it's all siloed in.
Well, what I think is Grace, actually, I don't know if you were there.
Cordova.
Grace Cordova
Yeah.
made this amazing comment on the main stage today. First session, knocked it out of the park. I thought it was an amazing session. And then Grace and I think Kimberly was
Kimberly
Kimberly
Richardson, yeah.
came up and talked here, and you should watch their video. It's amazing too.
Right.
But one of the things that Grace said was like, what world do we live in where you can handle getting $200,000 worth of bills, but you can't handle your test results? It's like, here you go. You're bankrupt.
Right.
You probably should think about getting a divorce not because you've fallen out with your spouse, but because if you
can't
don't,
afford it.
if you don't get a divorce, they're bankrupt too.
Right.
Right. Merry Christmas on that. You want your lab results? You want to know whether you're positive or not? We need to protect you from this information.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You may not be able to handle that.
Oh, yeah.
And it's just like I've never heard it so clearly said until she pointed it out.
Yeah.
If they're not protecting us from the psychological damage of our medical bills, how dare they say that we are able psychologically to handle test results?
Yeah.
I mean,
Well,
it's
I
just-
also
it's
have to
just
say
so
with my
weird.
data, I'm the only person that really has a huge incentive to fix this, right?
Yeah.
My physicians, I'm now at teams of, I've got over 60 different doctors that are looking at me and whatever, but not one of them is going to put together that data on me better than I can myself.
Right.
And so I think that's one of the things as we're talking about this data agency ownership. We're handing our data over to people who aren't handling it well themselves. We've got clinical researchers going to jail for mishandling information in clinical trials, right? So we've got all of these issues coming out, people who don't trust us to handle our own data, but we're handing it over to people who are completely misusing it and taking advantage of us at the same time. And so really that conversation around what is our data, what is our collective data worth as a community, I think even this whole healthcare space, I don't think we should be looking disease specific. I'm more of a future thinker. I think we should be looking at people based on their top 10 gene mutations and gene clusters, looking at their environment and really helping people on a different level. But we are so focused, right, on keeping us apart and keeping us siloed to really kind of keep us where we are. And we're stronger together.
That's a really good point.
Don't think we realize how actually strong we are.
Yeah.
So actually, what's new for Light Collective? What's upcoming? For you?
Do you have
We've
meetings?
got a lot.
Yes,
Yeah,
we're
a lot
going to
coming
keep on
up.
trying to solve this problem because clearly GoodRx is still violating. And the thing is,
And you didn't know about it. So our
Right.
work is not done. We still have all of
We're
these
gonna-
people.
have a chat with you
Okay.
and Loretta.
And anyone else out there?
Yes,
TV
yes,
land
yes,
who wants to
yes.
I just got to include them.
Yes.
Well, and let me say, I'm using this Restream IO. It lets me stream across 3 systems. It runs in the browser. I didn't have to download software. It's inexpensive. You know, you run your own show.
I
So
did
we
mine
can-
on StreamYard and Clubhouse for a while.
Yeah.
And we just have to really.
Yeah, and we just proved that you can have patients in 2 different locations
Right.
Oh,
on
yeah.
at the same time. It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
It's pretty neat. And what's nice about this, and I should have made this very, very clear before we started, is that we are live streaming now.
It
What
can't
you're
be.
saying, and then also it is saved to YouTube and saved to LinkedIn
Are you using StreamYard?
forever. I'm using restream.io.
Restream.io. Okay.
It's okay. It's
I'm
all
gonna look
public
at it.
knowledge now. So
Apparently, it wasn't before.
My whole life is
no,
public
but I mean,
knowledge.
I was gonna say the
Right.
wonderful thing about this is, my aunts and uncles, they do not watch Fred Trotter on television, right? They do not go to YouTube and type, I just wonder what Fred Trotter's up to.
Why?
So,
Why not?
Well, because it's so wonky. Like, I mean, there is nothing like. Let me protect your reputation. Watch this. Have you ever thought about the implications of macro on PHRs and whether or not they're going to refer feedings under TEFCA? And maybe we should be thinking about the FTC breach notification rule in a different way for systems. But have we really talked about GDPR adequately? I mean, I'm telling you right now,
right.
the algorithms are going to hear what I just said, and everything you said is safe. Because
well, you want to talk about algorithms.
Yeah.
And Andrea and I shared this on social media at one point. The algorithms that are fed to me are interesting sometimes, right? Because I have gotten funeral, right? I've gotten things on where do you want to put your body? Like, make yourself a tree, right? And so the implications for me as a person who's dealing with life-threatening conditions and still not knowing what my underlying cause is, to see ads of funeral services and where to put my body is not something that I want to see fed into my feed. And so I get a lot of drug suggestions, all of these different, things that are playing into my algorithms, right? A lot of help that everybody wants to give me, right? And so I think when you're looking at those things and the situation that someone is dealing with, right, seeing ads of you wanting to make me into a tree after I die does not help my psychological state when I'm struggling trying to figure things out, right? And so I think we also have to look at those things that we are seeing in our social media. Some may be helpful, right, with some of the companies that are out there. But when you're feeding people these in their vulnerable moments, right, we're scrolling on social media because we're coping. We're avoiding our life. We're looking at things that are distracting us from reality.
You want to see a cat video?
Yeah.
Maybe not a profound reminder that you're mortal.
That you're,
right.
And so I think those are some of the things, right, as we're looking at these social media constructs and structures is how do we, give these messages to people in these times as well?
Well, and we've been streaming so long that you have to be a real fan to have been on.
Hour and 30 minutes.
Okay, so I think it is a good place to stay. Like, we are dealing with the most serious problems. Light Collective has had some significant victories, has made a difference in really profound ways for companies like GoodRx, and eventually someone at GoodRx is going to watch this video. Hello, GoodRx. And
Gooder RX is coming.
Gooder RX is coming.
I'm gonna guess good RX.
So yeah.
Don't come
And-
back to me.
And I think more importantly,
We have more power.
yeah.
We have the power.
And you know what? Some viewer, 5 years from now is gonna be in a situation exactly the same as GoodRx, and you're not GoodRx, but you made the same mistake. And go look at the Light Collectives, read the principles. You know, I hope the website's up in 5 years. I think it would be good if the website was up in 5 years. I think we could probably manage that. And the work that's been done is something that can be referenced for a long time. And there's a lot of complicated balance and wording choices and thought that has gone into that. Some of which I contributed on, and some of which I'm happy to say I was out.
And can I say too, this isn't just a group of patients getting together.
That's
We
right.
have lawyers involved.
Oh, yes.
We've got physicians on our board. We have got
We have
people
an
that are-
entire law firm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we are not
Researchers.
working on
Yeah.
this
Scientists.
Right.
alone.
Yes.
So that is, I just want to make sure that that's clear as well, that this is a,
But there are a lot of crazy.
combined-
There are a lot of crazy patients.
yes.
There's-
Yes.
There's a lot of crazy patients.
There are.
Anyways,
There are. But,
But,
we
no,
found some good ones.
the Light Collective is a legit organization that has really put some careful thought. I think it is going to become in the very long term an organization like EFF that is a foundational layer on what will become the health internet, that is thinking about how to exchange data in a way that respects privacy, moves the slider to the left, because you want aggregation. You want people like me waking up every day to think about how can I exercise patient data to make life better for patients.
Yeah.
And you also want to give people like me the space to make mistakes occasionally.
Right.
And you also want to differentiate people like me who are maybe I'm making mistakes, but I'm operating goodwill. You want to differentiate the people from the other end who are doing things like taking advantage of Henrietta Lacks cells,
Right.
and really these profound,
Right.
oppressive uses of data. And I think, and I don't know if you've seen the work of EFF, but they've done a wonderful job of being the foundation of the internet, where in general, digital rights are expressed. I think the Light Collective will become the same kind of thing, except for healthcare civil rights that are digital in nature. So thank you for your work. I really appreciate it. Thank you for showing up and listening and being a
dealing with
sounding
all of
board.
this.
And you have such a beautiful and expressive face. And it was,
I don't know if that's
we
good
could-
or
we
bad
could-
with
we
what
could
we were
look
talking
over-
about.
We could look over and see how we were doing by looking at your face, and so could the audience. I really appreciate you being here, and thank you also for all your work. You've been working on this for years now, right? 5 years. And I think the last time we were working together, we sat on the couch. And, had some deep talks. So, okay. So, is there anything anybody wants to say to the camera before we get off? Because we've been talking. Thank
been
you,
talking
person,
way
for listening to
Watching
this
for an hour and
whole
37
thing.
minutes.
It's a lot. Anything?
I would just say, mistakes are going to be made. We all make mistakes. It's important to talk about the mistakes that we've made, right? Be open about them so other people can learn from them, because we don't want to keep doing this over and over again. No need to reinvent the wheel, but really just keeping that in mind that we're in a new space. And we're going to have to work together and communicate to really come up with a solution. My quote to everyone is always, it's only through collective intelligence and collaborative leadership that we'll find viable solutions that work for us all.
Very good.
I don't think any better.
I know.
Can you do any better?
Nope.
You want to end on that?
End on
We should
that.
end on that.
Right
Okay.
there.